Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. The show is designed to give you solutions to your day-to-day management and leadership problems. It's hosted by Matthew Haddock, a frontline manager and leader with over 25 years of experience. If you're ready, then let's get on with the show.
Hi and welcome back to the Manager Matt podcast show. I do hope you are well and you are getting the results through your team. And this episode looks at the people side a lot more than we normally do, although I normally do dive into the people side. In the show, I want to talk all things management, communication, leadership, and of course, much, much more. I'm your host, Matthew Haddock, as I hope you know. And as ever, please, like, rate, share the show with others who might get the benefit of improving their leadership. Now this week, I'm going to dive into, drumroll, the do's and don'ts of becoming a new senior leader and focusing on finding that right balance between a rapid change and listening and learning. So when you get that top job, there are critical moments in any leader's journey. Stepping into a new senior leadership role. If you just become a site director, VP, senior manager, or even the CEO, well, first of all, congratulations, well done. It's everything you've wanted. You've worked so hard to get to that level, and it is hard. You've gone through every hoop, jumped everything you need to do to get to where you are. But also, let's buckle down. There is no free lunch. I know people at other levels in the business look higher up and think they must have it made. They just sit inside that little ivory tower, sending emails out, having coffee, a couple of meetings a day. They don't actually get the pressure that senior leadership roles bring and the amount of energy it takes. Maybe not physical, but mental energy. You are on it 24/7. The buck is going to stop with you. They always quote, when you get into a job, you'll have heard this before, that the actions in that first 90 days can really set the tone for the entire way that you work in that business. But I think it starts from day one, hour number one. And today's episode, we're going to be all about the do's and don'ts of being that new senior leader, especially around that question of how much should you change fast and get those rapid results, and how much should you listen and learn first. So, me being a positive leader, as you've probably all grasped, I'm going to start with the do's. This is a great line, I like this one. Walk in with humility, not a hammer. Doesn't that sound great? So walking in with humility and not a hammer. And of course the do's is, do take your time to listen. Do take your time to learn. Do take your time to absorb before you make those sweeping changes as a senior manager. Yes, of course, you've been probably hired to fix things, lead a change, or take the org on the journey, whatever that journey may be, or to the next level. Sounds very Star Trek-y, doesn't it? Or Star Warsy, depends what you like. But even the best ideas can fall flat when you ignore some key reasons and key parts of any business. That's the culture, the people, and the context of what you're trying to do as a leader. So in your first few days and weeks, become a curious investigator. Become the nosy bastard in good old English. The one who gets around, talk to the frontline employees, get there, meet people. Walk the walk, walk the floor, sit in the restroom and talk to people about the weather. Show your face and let people see you're a human, not just a title on an office door. And then, of course, with your key stakeholders, and you know what I'm going to say, but if you're new to the show, welcome, of course. You're going to have to be doing one-to-ones with those key stakeholders. You're going to ask them what's working well, what is broken, but is invisible and not obvious. And what's one thing they'd change if they had my role? That's a great question. I love that question. What would you change if you had my job? It's surprising how much it comes out when people say that. Capture the patterns, not just that complaint, because there's people love to have an ear, and if they haven't had a good ear before, the last leader wasn't great, they're going to have a good moan at you, which is fine. But you've got to cut through that. I remember spending time in a couple of assignments before I got this one that I'm doing at the minute. And one thing that came through was that the systems didn't work. And the other thing that came through, speaking to lots of individuals, that nobody was playing on the same team. They were blaming each other. So you've got poor systems and process, and you've got blame. Those are a recipe for an absolute disaster when you go into a business. Because, of course, there lies the truth. Change imposed without context will breed a resistance, because people will not want to change if they don't feel they're part of that change. Of course, you've got to paint that picture. You've got to make sure people are understanding why you want to make that change, and they're on the change with you. Change with people will build momentum, will get things done quick. As quick as you want, maybe not, but quick to sustain. So remember that when you go to the do's. So let's go into the second part of this, the don'ts. You mustn't assume that what worked well before will work well straight away where you've gone. There's all this idea of a plug-in playbook, and you've got to be really aware of this. There's a big don't here. Don't treat your last job a success like it's a universal template, because there's lots of other factors that have made you successful at that last place. Of course there will be good stuff. There will be lots of things that you've done well and you want to keep those going, and that's perfectly fine. But you might come with this high-performing team mentality that you're going to crush it. That's what your last team did, and that's awesome. It's brilliant. But if you just copy and paste it, those old strategies into this new culture, it's like trying to run an operating system that runs on an Apple, ISO, and then you try to put it into an Android device. It's just not built for that. It won't work. It's going to take so much change. So instead of just bringing your plug-in playbook, you've got to adapt and customise it. Validate it through what you're going to learn on the ground with your do's, and then see if you can look at the steps you're doing. Is there steps that you need to put in? Do you need to skip some steps? You know, you don't want to risk credibility fast by putting in something that doesn't work really well and falls on its face. Be aware that you shouldn't call the last management out in public as well. Be aware of this. So many people do it. They come into a new job and they start to blame the last ones. Remember, that team worked under that old management or that old leader. So they are part of the old. They are part of the old ways of working. They made those happen. They may even feel guilty that they hadn't done anything about it. And it's probably not their fault, but it's the way it is. So your new team is going to be really, really angry if you just walk in going how rubbish everything is. And remember, they're your future culture. So just be aware when you're going in that your old playbook might not currently fit straight into it. There may be some similarities, and there's definitely going to be some stuff you can move in there, because there's no point in you being hired. They wouldn't have given you the job if they didn't think you were good enough. But be careful just trying to cut and paste. Now, one of the things you do need to do early on is the idea of these small wins. So a thoughtful change, so a thoughtful early change. Now, we've talked about it not being a massive change, but you know, when you start to make these moves, you need to be aware that you have to be thoughtful about what you do. So do make a few early symbolic changes that show you're really engaging and you're serious about what you want to do, because there's no point in making no changes. This is the fine line. This is the fine line you're going to do. They don't need to be massive. Remember, you're not trying to massively restructure it in the first few weeks. In fact, there shouldn't be these massive ones, but small, visible improvements. We all know, ending some unnecessary meetings, maybe clarifying what priorities you are really going to be doing, or spotlighting the team's wins. You know, sending a clear message that you're listening, that you're here to make things better, and you're acting with a purpose. And these quick wins will build trust. They'll get the team on side with you. They'll make the team understand how you tick. And then the big strategic shifts that are happening behind the scenes, you can build up to. But you've got those easy wins, and you've got this idea of the thoughtful early change in the bag. Now, let's not ignore the human side of this. And it's one of the big things you'll find as a leader. And of course, if you've got to a senior leadership role, you'll already know a lot of this. But don't forget that the job is 70% people and 30% process. Yes, there's process businesses and there's processes you might need to change, but the people are the big things. And the processes, in some way, are easy. Process changes or system changes. But when it comes to people, that's not so much, is it? When you step into a senior leadership role, you're stepping into a web of relationships, unspoken norms, and a lot of power dynamics that you won't know, especially if you're brand new. So don't just look at an org chart and assume that's how it's going to be. You need to evaluate. You need to evaluate the trust levels. You need to look at the energy of your team. You've got to look at the morale. And you've got to look at their unspoken fears, because there'll be a lot of fears. Remember, you're coming in to change things. Some of those people might have even gone for your job. They're not good enough. That's what they're thinking. So how do you make sure that these key players are going to be on your side? It's worth in your own head. It's not something you can really say out loud. Who holds that informal influence in the place? Where's the real resistance going to come from? And who's out there hiding? Who's going to be the assassin? Someone's going to sneak up on you. Look out for the smiling assassins. I've spoken about them in other shows. Leaders who see that whole system, not just the symptoms, are the ones who can create lasting change. So you're looking for the systems as a whole. What is wrong? What are the people in there not got? What is the thing that's really holding them back being successful? One thing that's a really good tool I've used in the past, and it might have been something you've heard before, is a 70-20 rule. I think I might have done a cast on it, I'm sure I have. It's how much you change should you make and how soon. Here's the framework. So this is how it works. So you should be spending 70% of the time listening and learning. Look at 20% small strategic changes that I spoke about earlier. Those ideas of having the thoughtful change. And then the 10% is those bold moves, but only after the trust is earned. So that 10% only comes in play when you've got the trust, when you've got the team. And in those first days, you're building that mental map of the organisation. By the time you get into your first 4 or 6 months, you'll have made your map, you know how it works. Then you can start to make those big structural decisions. Then are the times you can really start to push on. Now, if you're getting pressure to deliver early, which we all do, that's fine. But they will give you a honeymoon. They will give you a period of grace. Some will give you more, some will give you less. But you should be in those strides by the time you get to 6 months, and your team will be fully bought in by that point. Or, on the reverse, you're going to have to make some changes to that team, because that's how it works. So let's have some final thoughts of what we've spoke about today. So whether you're walking into chaos or calm, or something in between, which is where we normally are, remember the few things we've talked about. Do lead with humility and curacy. Be the nosy bastard. Don't fall on to that trap of overcorrecting, or trying to move too fast, or calling out the last team as being poor. Do make those thoughtful, symbolic and early changes to really show that you're going to make some changes. And don't forget the human and emotional territory when it comes to these changes. And above all, play the long game, because great leaders isn't about fast moves, it's about smart moves, and smart moves that last long. So, if you're a smart person, I'm sure you are, you know what I'm going to say next. Firstly, I'm going to say please subscribe, because it's great if you can. Please like, share, comment, all that I said at the beginning. But also, please send me your feedback to managermattpodcast@gmail.com. Love to hear new, old, or even completely different ideas of how to lead, and really go for it. I don't mind. I answer all the emails, so if you send me an emails, if you want to send me any questions, I can write a show and I'll get you up there. I'll even do your name check like I did with Pete last week. But anyway, for now, that's it for Manager Matt. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this Manager Matt podcast. We hope you found it interesting, helpful and actionable. One last thing, please leave a quick review on iTunes or with your podcast provider, as it helps to spread the word of Manager Matt. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you did like anything in particular, send an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com or visit managermatt.co.uk for more content. Feedback is a gift, so let's keep giving. See you next week.